Let me ask you something right off the bat. Ever feel like a guest in your own story? It's this quiet loneliness, right? And it's got nothing to do with whether you're actually alone in a room. Yeah, it's that really specific feeling, kind of like you're watching your own life play out from a distance, through a pane of glass. I mean, you're there, people know your name, they know your laugh, but deep down, you've got this nagging feeling that none of them have ever really met the real you. So, if any of that resonates even a little bit, then you're in the right place. We're going to dive deep into this whole experience of feeling like a stranger in your own life. And, what's so strange about this feeling is that on the surface, life can look perfectly fine, right? You might have the relationships, the career, a routine that, for all intents and purposes, works. But just underneath all that, there's this quiet loneliness that comes from constantly adapting. There's actually a psychological term for this, believe it or not. It's called identity diffusion. The term comes from Erik Erikson, and it basically describes a state where a person doesn't have a stable, coherent sense of who they are. But what that clinical language doesn't really capture is just how quietly this whole thing creeps up on you.
Because here's the thing, you don't lose yourself all at once in some big dramatic moment. Nah, it's a death by 1,000 cuts. It happens in these tiny little increments. A preference you didn't voice just to avoid a fight, an opinion you kind of softened because the room just felt a little unsafe. It's these little pieces of yourself just folded away, one by one.
Okay, so how does this drift actually happen? Where does it come from? Well, to get that, we've got to look at the origins of what psychologists call the false self. So we're shifting gears here from the what to the why. A lot of the time, it starts with something called relational conditioning. And look, this isn't always about big, obvious trauma. More often, it's this really subtle, almost ordinary process where as a kid, you just learn which parts of you are safe to show and which parts you've got to hide away to keep that connection, to stay loved by your parents or caregivers. And we learn these lessons in 1,000 little ways, right? Like when you cry and you're told to just stop. You learn vulnerability is dangerous. When your anger is met with a cold shoulder, you learn being authentic can actually cost you love. And when your needs get you slapped with the label needy, well, you just learn to stop needing things. It is such a powerful and really quiet form of conditioning. And get this, there's a deep neurological reason for why we do this. Our brain, at its core, is a social survival organ. For a little kid, belonging isn't just a nice to have. It is survival, full stop. So the brain will prioritize that connection, that belonging, above almost everything else, even above being our true, authentic selves. So all of this leads to what's clinically called ego-syntonic adaptation. I know, it's a mouthful. But it's really just a fancy way of saying you get really good at becoming whoever the room needs you to be. And when you do that over and over and over again, for long enough, you can actually forget that there was ever anyone else underneath all those layers you put on. The famous psychoanalyst Carl Jung, he nailed this. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." See, he understood that for so many of us, the true self doesn't just pop out, it gets buried. And he called these buried parts the shadow. Now, these aren't evil parts or anything like that. They're just the parts of us that were never allowed to see the light of day.
All right, so let's talk about the cost. What's the price we pay for this constant performance? How does this identity drift actually show up, day to day? Well, it creates this huge internal conflict. Because on the outside, the performance can look amazing. People see you as adaptable, easygoing, maybe even charismatic. But the internal reality, it's a completely different story. It's this quiet, invisible grief, a deep loneliness, and just a bone-deep exhaustion that comes from being so disconnected from your own self. And this cost? It shows up everywhere, like in conversations, someone asks your opinion and poof, just a disorienting blankness. Or in relationships, where you find yourself kind of erasing yourself just to keep the other person close. Your career might be on a path that looks great on paper, but it just doesn't feel like yours. And in your body? Oh man, it could show up as this chronic, totally unexplained exhaustion. At the heart of it all, your self-worth gets tangled up, not in who you are, but in how useful you are to other people.
So, what does the journey back to you actually look like? This is so important.
The key thing to get here is that the return journey isn't about going backward, trying to find some old version of yourself. No, the return is inward.
We can think about this inward journey in 5 key moves. First up is awareness, and that means investigating your story like a curious scientist, but without all the judgment. Second is shadow integration, actively reclaiming those parts of you that you exiled. Third, nervous system regulation. This is huge, teaching your body that it is finally safe to be you. Fourth is tolerating discomfort, because being truly seen is going to feel weird, even wrong at first. That's actually a sign it's working. And finally, number 5, softness over survival. It's about letting the self you're returning to just exist without having to earn its place all the time.
And all of this, it builds to a really powerful realization. This journey isn't about getting fixed. It's about becoming whole. Because here's the most crucial takeaway of all. You were never broken. You were adaptive. You did exactly what you needed to do to survive.
So that stranger you've been feeling inside, yeah, that one, the one that doesn't quite seem to fit the life you've built, that's not your enemy. Not at all. That is the most honest version of you, and it's just been patiently waiting for an invitation to come back home.
You know, the poet Rilke wrote this absolutely beautiful line. He suggested that maybe all the dragons in our lives are really just princesses, waiting to see us act with beauty and courage. And this work of reclaiming yourself, it's exactly that. It's an act of profound beauty and courage. And just remember, the goal here is not to be fixed into some kind of perfect, polished version of a person. It's to become whole. It's about integrating all the parts of yourself, the ones you've hidden and the ones you've shown, into one coherent, authentic you.
So I'm going to leave you with one final thought. Really, it's a question to take with you. Are you ready to stop performing your life and start quietly and courageously to actually live it?